G'day and welcome back to Reality Check. I'm your host, Ross Coulthart, and today it's my honour to bring to Reality Check for the very first time the filmmaker who has probably done more than anyone else to elevate public awareness of the legitimacy of UFOs, UAPs as an authentic mystery worthy of intense investigation. Filmmaker James Fox is an English-born American filmmaker whose first UFO documentary was made nearly 30 years ago. He's done Out of the Blue, I Know What I Saw, The Phenomenon, Moment of Contact, and The Program. That's his most recent one. They are brilliant, credible, factually driven presentations that stand out because they dared to take the UAP subject seriously. Now, it's James's 2022 film, Moment of Contact, that brings him back here today. That film is James's investigation into the 1996 Varginha UAP incident, often called the Roswell of Brazil. Now, James has just finished updating that film with major new evidence. I'm very excited to bring this to you today. He has explosive new details that we are going to tell you about today for the very first time. I caught up with James at Contact in the Desert way back in May, and he whispered in my ear over a coffee about what he had in this film update. And boy, I've been waiting for months here. He called me literally yesterday and said, I've got it, I'm ready to go. And I'm so excited that he's asked us to help lead out this film because it's very exciting what he's got. James has obtained an exclusive interview with a neurosurgeon who says he quite literally touched and telepathically communicated with what he testifies on the record to James was a live alien being held in captivity by Brazilians and then apparently handed over to the US military. James, I'm very excited to bring you here to Reality Check. Welcome, sir. Maybe we could start off by giving us a bit of a summary of what the Varginha case was all about.
Thank you so much for having me on, Ross. I really appreciate it. And I don't know if that was deserved intro, but I appreciate it very much. So thank you. Well, let's see how far back I can go here. I was making my second UFO film in the late 90s, Out of the Blue, with a partner. It was probably circa 1999. And I'll remind your audience, I was making my second documentary on UFOs. And we were mapping out the film, and we were going to cover Bent Waters and the Phoenix Lights and various other cases around the world. And my partner at the time was a former BBC correspondent, Tim Coleman. He said, "Oh, mate, so we got to get this, Brazilian case. It was absolutely unbelievable. These aliens walking around in the live, And I thought, I picked the wrong partner for this film. This guy's out of his mind. Like, there's no way that happened." So I just want everyone to understand, that's how I was introduced to this case. Fast forward over 10 years, I am, God, more than 10 years. Yeah, probably. Any case, I'm invited to Brazil on a separate account. I just finished a film called I Know What I Saw, which is a 2-hour special for the History Channel. And I get invited to give a presentation in Brazil in a place called Peruíbe, which is sort of the south of Sao Paulo. And Stanton Friedman is there. So I love Stanton Friedman, and I respect him tremendously. He's the guy that, thanks to him and a handful of others, we know about Roswell. So I'm there with Stanton, and I'll back up a second. Right before I left, there was a very good friend of mine who was very high up in the entertainment industry, Jeff Sagansky. I'll use his name. He's fine with that. And he said, "Oh, James, you're going to Brazil. You have to look into that Varginha case." And I was, "Oh God, not this, please." But I had a lot of respect for him. And I said, "Jeff, yeah, sure. I'll look into that for you. Yeah. I'll definitely do that." Click. And I said to myself, I'm not wasting 1 second on this case. So I fly to Brazil, and I'm there at this conference with Stanton Friedman, and the topic came up. I think there was like a witness there or something. And Stanton looked at me and he said, "Oh, James, yeah, you don't know about the Varginha case." And I said, well, I know about it, but live aliens walking around in town, like, please. And he goes, not so fast. There's a lot of very compelling firsthand testimony. So that was the impetus for me to say, okay, let me have a look. Let me poke around a little bit. And so the more I looked, the more I found. And here we are 16 years later. And we've got the most compelling, in my humble opinion, firsthand eyewitness testimony the world's ever seen. And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so to kick off the events, would it be fair to say that probably the defining event that kicked this all off is the testimony of a pilot, Carlos de Souza,
Yes.
13th of January 1996, and he spots a cigar-shaped object about the size of a school bus emitting smoke, losing altitude over Varginha, and he follows it to a field. What happens, James?
So he was very early in the morning. He was an ultralight pilot. He was a history professor in Sao Paulo, Carlos de Souza, and he sees what this strange looking, perhaps it was a prototype. He didn't know. It was a cigar shaped, aluminum, colored, very early in the morning. And it was clearly in distress. It had a big gash on the side. It had a vapor type smoke coming out the back, not typical smoke. It was more like a vapor. And he thought, my gosh, that looks like it's going down. And he was right near what's called the Maiolini Farm, which is roughly 10, 12 miles outside as the crow flies from Varginha. And he drives off this freeway and he follows this dirt road up to what he describes as an impact site. He said he saw this thing struggling to stay in the air. It impacts the ground. Half of it stays somewhat intact, and there's rest of debris over a very large area, larger than a football field.
And does he see the craft crashed on the ground?
Yeah, he sees it go down into the ground, and then he lost sight of it, but he saw it go down and crash.
And
Yes.
when he gets to that location, what happens? Can he get onto the site?
Yes. So he arrives at the site with his car. He gets out of the car and he sees this. He said the smell was just so horrendous that he grabbed his t-shirt and he put it up over his mouth. It was like sulfur, like ammonia,
Ammonia,
eyes
yeah.
watering, very, very strong. He said it was so strong he could barely like tolerate it. And then he saw these lots of like little bits of aluminum. There was one piece of the craft that was intact that was about half of it, about half the size of a large school bus, and lots of bits of debris of various sizes. And he said he picked one of the pieces up, and he said it was as light as a feather. You couldn't really feel it in your hands. And he crumpled it up, and when he opened his hands, it took the shape back up again,
Just like Roswell.
just like Roswell. And so but he wasn't thinking alien. He really didn't know what he was looking at. And then the military trucks rolled in from the military base from the exact opposite direction that he arrived.
So he's absolutely categorical that the Brazilian military intervened, took over a site where what appears to have been an alien spacecraft has crashed.
No, no question.
Does he see a body? Does he see any live
No,
beings?
nope. He didn't see anybody. I did ask him. I said, "Was the remaining part of the craft large enough for beans?" He said, "Yes, but I didn't see any beans."
And do the military take the piece of metal that he'd picked up off him? Do they allow
Yeah.
him to?
Oh yeah. They came and gun. I mean, they were telling him to leave, to leave, to leave, to leave, and then he was like, "I'm just trying to help." And they took out their rifles and they threatened him. And that's at that point he didn't have the piece anymore. He got back in his car and left.
Were there any American soldiers with the Brazilian military in that intervention?
Not that he said no. Mm-mm.
So you've got an obvious crash. I guess in the sequence of events, the next event that has always intrigued me. By the way, I've got to show my personal interest in the Virginia case, James, and this is your fault. I, I've got a little alien being from Virginia
Oh my gosh.
that
Oh my
a
gosh.
guy
Hold
from
on
the
one
United
second.
Kingdom who makes models. Oh, you've got one as well, I suspect.
Okay. I wasn't going to share this, but I have one too.
Okay,
We have something in
so
common.
no, I've had this in front of my audience now for months, and nobody's picked up on it. So I thought it was time to reveal to the audience that I have an alien being in my set. So
That's really funny. Yeah, that's really great. But
So
let me
Can
Yeah,
I just, I'm just interested in the sequence because
please.
I've always
Yes.
been struck. You've got that crash about 10 miles out of town. And then, as I
Yep.
understand it, on the morning of January the 20th, there's a couple who report seeing a damaged craft, which presumably is another different craft, flying low over the city of Varginha.
No, no. Okay, so that's we made that much clearer in this cut of the film, and we also have footage that we've put together of such a craft. I know this is hard to grasp and to wrap your mind around, but if the claims are true and the witnesses are to be believed, what we were seeing with the craft over Varginha was a rescue operation
By
because
non-humans.
yes, because they all said, and I had a hard time believing it, but I interviewed a lot of people and they said it was looking for something. I said, how do you know it was looking for something? Because it was doing a grid search, slow and low and methodical, going over, stopping, back and forth for like a long time.
So it wasn't a damaged craft at all. It was a
Not that
craft
one.
that was looking for
No.
its comrades.
Nope, there were now we have new witnesses on the cigar-shaped craft. We have the two farmers, Enrico, I'll think of her last name in a second. They both saw the same thing that Carlos described, a cigar-shaped craft with vapor coming out the back early in the morning, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, something like this. We actually got a map and we figured out, okay, we have a sighting, we have Varginha here, we have the farmers that see the craft here, we have another witness that sees the craft over here, and it crashes, and it ultimately crashes right in the middle. It actually makes a lot more sense now that we have that. So we have new witnesses where he was in his farm. We shot there, and he said he heard something very strange in the sky, and he looked out the window and he saw this big cigar-shaped craft making a weird noise like it was in trouble, and it landed on his farm. And that was so we have that testimony now as well.
Right. And so that's a completely different craft because that's the thing I could never understand. How could the
Yeah.
craft have crashed on the 13th of January and then a
Yeah.
week later people are saying they've seen the craft again?
We don't know. No. So yeah, the craft that people have described was a disc-shaped craft that we're doing as a grid search operation. Everybody talks about that. The monument over Brazil, sorry, over Varginha up at is a big disc-shaped craft. That's the craft that people saw that was methodically looking. And I specifically asked all these witnesses, how do you know it was looking for something? They said it was low and it was going out, coming back, stopping, going out, coming back, stopping. It was clearly looking for something. And we really make that distinction this time in the crap because it's like, wow, that's crazy, you know?
Do you have any intelligence, James, on how the craft that did crash, the cigar shaped craft on the 13th of January 1996, is there any evidence to suggest that it was attacked by us humans, as we now know is the case, that the US apparently has been using high pulse microwave weapons and indeed in some cases artillery to try and bring down these craft?
I've thought about this for a long time, well over a decade. And I'm thinking to myself, all these witnesses describe this craft as having this gash in the back, struggling to remain in the air and smoke. So it collided, something collided with it. Okay. Was it a meteor? Was it an asteroid or I don't know, something? I mean, it collided with something. Something hit it. So your guess is as good as mine. I know that there have been orders over the decades of shoot first, ask questions later. Would it surprise me? It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know because I don't. You know, the case goes somewhat cold when it gets on the American side. But the
I,
Americans, apparently, according to the Brazilians, knew it was coming.
Yeah, I'll get to that. I'll get to that. So, in terms of our chronology, I'm trying to keep you to a good chronology. On the
Yes.
afternoon of January the 20th, 1996, around 1 p.m., three young women, sisters, Lillian, 14 years old, Valkyria Silva,
Valkyria.
Valkyria,
Yep,
who's
Valkyria.
16, and Katya, who's 22, they encounter something. What do they see?
So my understanding, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was a very hot day because January is summer, and they were taking a shortcut through like a little. It was an area of Virginia that was being developed. There were some construction sites, and there was a cinder block wall and a little gate, and they could go through this field. and kind of cut across as a little shortcut. And all three of them were walking together. And one of them said they saw like some graffiti on the cinder block wall, which caught their attention. And they're looking at this graffiti, and then they see what looks like maybe a statue or something slouched up against the cinder block wall. They're looking at it. They're getting closer and closer. Got within 10, 12 feet of it, again in broad daylight, all three of them. And this little creature that looked like it was feeble and suffering went from a crouched position, staring ahead, to turning and looking them right in the eyes. And that sent one of the girls, I think it was Valkyria and her sister Liliani, running, freaked out, like she said she screamed and ran and left Katya. So Katya is locked eyes on this creature, and she's having telepathic communication with it. And Liliani, who I think was 16, and Valkyria was probably 14. Liliani realizes Katya is still back there. I got to go back. And they didn't know she didn't know what that was. She left her sister and ran back to get Katya. But she was just locked eyes on this thing. And it was basically telling, I need help. It was feeble. It was scared. It needed help. And she grabbed Katya by the hand and yanked her out of there. And off they went. And that exploded in the headlines.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, it's 4 to 5 feet tall. It's a hairless creature with oily brown skin.
Yes.
And crucially, it had 3 head bumps, which...
Yeah, it had like little lumps, 3 of them, yes.
So that's pretty much what what they saw, and it's squatting like that, looking directly at that young girl.
Yes.
Now, you've interviewed the young girls, haven't you?
Multiple times. Multiple times.
And they're adamant that this is what they saw.
No, absolutely no question. They worked with a woman named Beto Rodriguez, who is a artist, and they got together with her, and they created that now infamous poster of the drawing of the creature, and they said it's exactly what it looks like.
Because I noticed that in the official debunk of the whole Varginha case, there's a claim made by the military and the Brazilian government that it was likely a homeless man named Madinho, who was known for crouching in the area due to a mental disability. What do you say to that assertion?
I've seen him. He's a known character in the town. He's still there. Like, I just saw him just a month ago. And everybody knows who he is. Like, he was like, he was a pillar. Everybody knows Medino. It was just so laughable. It's absolute. Yeah.
So with some certainty, you've got triple corroboration there from the 3 young girls, now women. And they're adamant that what they saw was clearly some kind of alien being, not a local homeless man.
1,000%. 1,000%. I mean, they just cringe when you hear that. And the girls are saying, like, they don't know exactly what they saw, but they said it wasn't a human and it wasn't an animal, and it had telepathic communication through the eyes. It was not something of this earth. Is like,
Yeah, the thing I find fascinating, James, is a lot of our folk mythology talks about the devil, and isn't it interesting that they describe an oleaginous figure that essentially could pass for devil-like from our mythology? And it's interesting because the story gets thicker, more intense. Later that day, there's a police officer, Marco Eli Cheresi, a young police officer. He actually reportedly captures a similar creature.
Just a couple blocks away. A couple hours later, just a couple blocks away.
Is it the same creature?
One would only assume that it had to be. It was like 2 blocks away, a couple hours later.
What does he do with it?
So it's interesting because Marco Cheresi was a military officer, and Eric Lopes, also another military officer. They're both friends. Marco apparently was off for the night, and they get this he gets an APB that, hey, there's something really unusual out lingering, to go capture whatever this thing is. They didn't say it was an ET or anything. It was something very unusual. So those were the orders given to Eric Lopes. Eric calls up his buddy who was off for the night. He says, "Hey, you want to join me? I've got this crazy mission of looking, you know." So Marco Shrees jumps in the car with him, and off they go. And they actually see this creature 2 blocks from where the girls encountered it just a couple hours later, running across the road. So Marco Shrees, without a moment's hesitation, just jumps out of the car and goes and grabs it. And in the process of grabbing it, and it didn't put up much of a fight, it was pretty feeble, and he put it in the back of the car, and he got a little scratch under his arm, and he got some weird oil on his skin. They go to one little tiny hospital. It was more like a clinic. And the doctor apparently came out and took one look and said, I don't know what that is, but you're not bringing it here. So then they go off to regional hospital and they drop it off at regional hospital. So, yeah, sorry.
No, that's good. So you've set this up perfectly now. Is this where Dr. Italo Venturelli comes across the being?
Exactly. Yes. Yep. So we had, up until this point, we had testimony from a military officer who we found that he took a creature from Humanitas Hospital because it went from the first little clinic, didn't get out of the car. Then it went to regional, got out of the car, was delivered, taken indoor. In fact, I was just at regional hospital like 2 weeks ago, and I went to the front desk, the main entry point, and I said, "Hey, you know, this incident," and they got a big plaque out front. This is where an ET came. It's all right out in the open. Nobody's hiding this story.
Sure.
And I asked the people at the desks coming into the ER, "Hey, have you guys heard?" "Oh yeah, one of the people that was there that night still working here now." And they said, "The creature." "No, I'm not kidding you. I swear to you." And they said, and they got a big plaque outside. I can share you a picture of it, talking about the events. But they took the ET in the back entrance. They said they did not come in the front. They took it in the back.
Did the person you spoke to, aside from Dr. Italo, did they also see the alien being?
Good question. We only had 24 more hours before we were flying home. We got the details. We got the contact information of that individual that was there that night. Don't know. Didn't have a chance to talk to them. Don't know if they.
That's what I love about this, James. Is you've been coming and going from this city now for years, and each time you go back, you get more layers of factual information that corroborate what you've originally uncovered.
You got to hear, like, so now we have, for the first time ever, because we have this military police officer who we got to come forward, and he drove a creature from Humanitas to Eza military base, and then Eza Campinas, and that's when the Americans came in, right? So now, for the first time ever, we have firsthand eyewitness testimony from the lead neurosurgeon still at the hospital, who describes face-to-face contact with the live alien for 4 minutes. It's incredible.
So at this point, James, with your permission, we're going to roll the little sizzle grab you've given us from Dr. Italo Venturelli. Here's Dr. Italo.
Meu nome é Italo Venturelli, estudei em São Paulo, fiz neurologia, neurocirurgia, fiz mais de 5.000 cirurgias. Só queria deixar essa mensagem que eu realmente vi. No dia fui ver como se eu tivesse ido ver um paciente, e não era um paciente, realmente era um alien, claramente um alien. O crânio era em forma de gota, os olhos em forma de gota. Eu fui ver um paciente, achando que era um humano. E eu vi ali um ser maravilhoso de um mundo que eu não conheço. Me pergunto se estava sofrendo, ele não estava sofrendo, se ele estava entendendo, ele estava entendendo. Muito calmo, muito tranquilo, olhou para mim como se entendesse tudo o que eu estava pensando. Eu acho bacana conversar isso, explicar para as pessoas que existem muito mais coisas do que a gente imagina. Para mim foi muito importante ver, porque eu vi a imensidão que tem esse universo, né? Não somos só nós aqui, nesse mundo tão maravilhoso, mas deve existir muitos outros, e aquele ser que estava ali é prova disso.
What I love, James, about Dr. Italo is he's very open about the fact that this being touched him. He seems quite emotional about the experience.
So, okay, I'll tell you how this came about, because it's extraordinary what happened. We knew We knew that the live alien was at regional hospital. We have people that we're in touch with over more than a decade that work at both hospitals that we meet privately with every time we go to Virginia. It's always quiet, off the record. They come and there's certain secrets they talk about during surgery and only during surgery. So we knew, and from other testimony, that that creature was it. So the other neurosurgeon who was on duty that night was his sort of protege. It was Dr. Italo and Dr. Marcos Vinicius. Dr. Marco Vinicius did a little procedure on the creature. Apparently, had some damage, some swelling, something happened. Did a little procedure on the creature, and I don't want to go into too much detail because it's an ongoing thing. And then he had a heart attack and died in 2018. Okay, so now he's
Wow.
gone, and his partner, who's the lead neurosurgeon, Dr. Italo, himself had a heart attack just a few months ago, and he's in the ICU, staring at the ceiling, thinking that he was going to die, and he thought, "I can't believe I'm taking this to the grave. This is not right. If I survive this, I'm going public." And
Good for
then,
him.
yep. And so he said, "I'm doing this for my grandchildren, and I don't care what the consequences are. I don't care." That's what
That
he
is
said.
such a raw act of courage. Those are the kind of whistleblowers we need, James. And
Yep.
full
I
credit
get
to
like,
you. Full credit to you for persuading him to speak to you about it. I just take my hat off to witnesses like Dr. Italo Venturelli for having the courage to come forward. Was he
we
threatened not to speak?
oh yeah. So what happened was, and I want to send a shout out to Alini Kras, who's our lead translator and one of our co-producers. She has a very disarming presence, and she calmed him, and he snuck us into the back of the hospital, snuck us in. And we're going, what's happening? What's going on? He sneaks us into the ICU, exactly where it happened. We get masked up because you can't be in the ICU without it. So we get all of our masks on. I don't know where this is going. And all of a sudden he just starts telling all.
Wow.
And and it was extraordinary. And then the hospital staff caught us filming. And what are you doing in here? You're not supposed to be filming. Nobody has any permits. Nobody, so they kick us out, but we'd gotten the goods. And he's like, "I think I just lost my job." And so they kick us all out. So we leave the hospital and we go into a we didn't know where we're going. We just went into a cafe next door and we're filming at this cafe. We're all like practically crying. And I asked them how it felt after 29 years to come forward, what it was like to look into the eyes of this creature. Tell me what it was like. I was dying to know. And he said it was a higher level of intelligence, so much higher, more advanced. Even though that it was in captivity, it had control of the room. He said, an intelligence way beyond. It was like an angel. But he describes his skin as more white with the big red eyes and the little horns, exactly the way the girls described. And I just thought to myself, was that sort of a defense measure? Did their skin react to the hot sun? Did
Oh,
when they're
maybe.
when they're scared and freed? I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
So is this particular being damaged? Are they injured?
Yes, every being that I might understand. And here's an interesting thing is that I remember when I was first going to include a whole scene from Varginha in the phenomenon, right? So I was covering like Rua and Socorro and a number of other cases in the United States, and I was covering Varginha. And Dr. Roger Lear was adamant. It was like 2012, maybe 2013, and Dr. Roger Lear was just adamant about getting on camera. But at the time, I had just flown. We'd rented this filming space in Los Angeles, and we had all these witnesses coming in from different corners of the world about the Africa case, Rua, Zimbabwe, for the 20th anniversary, bringing those guys together. And I was hyper focused on that. I was dealing with Kenneth Arnold's daughter, Kim Arnold, getting her to go on camera for the first time, revealing all these incredible things about his experience. And then Roger and I was backburnered to Virginia for the time because I had my hands full. Like we was working 17-hour days. And Roger Lear kind of got upset and he says, "Well, if you're not gonna, if you're not gonna film me, at least take my tapes." And so he gave me his tapes and then I digitized them. I don't know what the exact time span was, but I gave him back to him and then he died. So
Wow.
fast forward when I was producing because I ended up deleting all of the scenes from Varginha. I mean, it was a very painful day out of the phenomenon because I just couldn't squeeze it in. It was too much, too complicated, too complicated. We were still missing critical testimony. We couldn't find Souza, like a number of other people. I said, okay, I'm going to make a movie on this case alone. The heck with the rest of it. And I deleted the whole thing out of there. So fast forward all these years later, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've got the Roger Lear tapes. So I went and found them. And then I bought his book, and I'm reading the book, and I have this incredible encounter. And the tapes were basically a transcript of the book was a transcript of the tapes because I had the tapes. However, there was one scene where he's in Humanitas Hospital talking to doctors that allegedly worked on another alien. And he gave this incredible description of his interview with these two doctors. And that was at Humanitas Hospital, but he talks about communication with this creature, like high-level communication. It's phenomenal.
So we're talking here, is this alien that you're talking about that was at Humanitas Hospital, is that a completely separate being from the one that Dr. Italo is saying that he was trying to treat?
I believe so, but I don't know for sure, but I believe so.
But the implications are, if this is all true and correct, that there are at least two bodies of alien beings, so-called biologics, in the possession now of what we'll learn to be the US military or intelligence community.
Yes. So we also just interviewed the former chief of police of the area all around as a military base. And we've been trying to get him for years, and we would just show up at his house. We just kept doing it year after year after year. And we finally got him a couple months ago. And he says,
is he the guy where you turned up and he was at a window on a house that was elevated above you guys looking up at it? And you were really worried you were going to get shot because he had a gun.
Oh, yeah. No, he said, I will shoot you. That guy, that's a different guy. I was P2 military police. But Pedro was the former chief of police. And it's like we finally showed up at his house, and we were going over there. Maybe it was like 6 o'clock, and we were all in a kind of a hurry. We're trying to continue north to get up to Varginha. We had a lot of filming to do. And I said, hey, let's stop and get some pizza. And it was like, well, we got a job to do. And I wanted to stop and get some pizza. We met this great restaurant owner of pizza, and we had pizza, and we had a little wine. We had a great dinner, but it really cost us a good 90 minutes. And so we were showing up at the former chief of police, Pedro Aguiar, a little later than we wanted to. As it turns out, it was perfect because when we arrived, he had just gotten home 10 or 15 minutes earlier. So it was absolutely divine. It was perfect. And we eventually got our way into his house. And then it's like, hey, you mind if we take a couple pictures? They got the camera in there. And then we got the audio going. And then he's like, you know what? And he gave us an interview. And he said that he heard that there were 3.
Wow.
That's what he heard. Yeah. And he saw one of them under a tarp that was probably deceased. He was at the military base Eza. He describes all the helicopters and all the activity. He said he saw more brass that day at Eza military base than he's ever seen in his life. More brass. He talked about the brass. And so we got him to go on the record.
Senior officers, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we got the former chief of police now for the first time. And the military officer, Marco Cheriz, who died a couple weeks after allegedly handling this creature, he dies. Well, the people that did the autopsy is I think it's IPD, 2 forensic pathologists, Dr. Giannini and Dr. Armando, both went on the record for the first time for us on camera just recently and said, I did the autopsy. The guy that did the tissue samples, Dr. Giannini, who founded the company, he said, I've never seen bacteria behave in the way that bacteria behaved. It's never before and never since.
So just to remind our audience, this is the military policeman who got a scratch under his arm when he was retrieving the body or the alien, the live alien, and taking it to the hospital that night in the original 20th of January incident. And he'd got that scratch. It had become infected and developed an abscess. And so the pathologists couldn't help him at all. They couldn't treat him.
Well, so he was treated and I talked to another doctor who also treated him just recently. He didn't go on camera, but we met with him privately. And he said we threw the kitchen sink at him and there's nothing we could do. That bacteria was just the most resilient bacteria they've ever seen. Nothing reacted to it, and it killed him.
Now, James, I just want at this point, because our audience may be sort of reeling from the number of people that you've cited here. There are multiple corroborative witnesses, people who saw craft, people who saw beings, doctors, military police. How many of these people do you think would be willing to testify publicly to an inquiry under oath?
All of them. And
Wow.
I'm okay, so I can't go into detail right now, but let's just say that I'm working with certain individuals in the government to make that happen.
I'm very
I got to leave
excited
it
to
right
hear
there.
that. Yeah,
Not
because
that
I
not
mean, the thing that blows me away about what you're revealing here, and there's much more to come, is you've done layered quality investigative journalism. This is not something that's easily debunked. You have multiple corroborative witnesses supporting a consistent claim.
I have the head neurosurgeon of that runs the entire department at regional hospital today, willing to take a public lie detector test and testify that everything he's saying is true. And then there
Did,
are other doctors that we're talking to now. Like
did
we're
he
in
lose
that
his
inner circle.
job because you did the interview, or was it
Uh,
okay?
it was tumultuous, but he was so in demand that they couldn't like he's the lead guy, so they couldn't shoot themselves in the foot. So it's been rough, is a bit of a rough ride with him. But he said to me, he goes, James, I don't care the consequences. The world needs to know this happened. This being that I encountered communicated with me telepathically. It was a highly advanced intelligence, way more than anything he's ever seen here on Earth. He called it almost like an angel. And it was despite the fact that it sends chills. Like, despite the fact that it was in captivity, it had control of the room. Now, one more thing I think you were asking me about. So he said it was because I asked him, how long did you spend? Did you show the trailer of the film yet?
We're going to show the trailer at the very end. I'm going to
Okay.
tease the trailer at the very end.
So I asked him, like, how long did you spend with this creature? I always want to I want to experience the witnesses. I want so badly to be there in the room with them and know every detail. So just like put me in that room with what did it feel like, and I get all those little just details. I want to hear it all. And he said after about 4 minutes, he stepped out to do something, and the military burst in, took the burst in. I think is exactly what he said, burst in, and took the bean and threatened everyone with secrecy, and then left.
So the being's still alive at that point.
Yes, the bean was alive, and the military grabbed it and left.
And this is the Brazilian military. There's no US officers with that Brazilian military team.
There are others claiming, excuse me, that they were in contact with Americans, but that was later, a little
Okay.
bit later.
And do we know where the being was taken from the hospital where Dr. Italo had attempted to treat it?
We unfortunately, I know that the beans ended up at EZA and definitely Campinas, but I don't know. And then, of course, we have the flight control officer who said that the USAF, which is the United States Air Force flight, came in and it didn't have authorization from the Brazilian government to land. And a higher level government official, Brazilian, walked in and said, let the plane land. So we put out a FOIA request for all air flights in America that came into Brazil from the 14th, I think it was the 13th to the 27th or something like this. And it took 3 years for our team to get that response. And it came back from the CIA. And it's like basically it's a national security issue. It's classified, and your request is denied.
So let me get this very clear, James. Normally, aircraft movements like that would be the subject of very little controversy and they would be released.
One would
You've
imagine, but what do I know? All I know is I asked, and I was told it was like national. It's in the film. You'll see it.
so you know from a military source, an air traffic controller, that
Yeah, he's in. Yeah,
a US Air Force plane came into the ESA
yes,
military base,
yes.
very close to
Uh,
Varginha.
uh,
Uh,
they came to Campinas.
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 Whereabouts is that relative
Not
to
that far.
Virginia?
I show it on the map in there. I'd have to say it's to the south, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours south,
But we
pretty
know,
much
don't
south
we?
of Varginha.
your witness told you that US military helicopters were part of that deployment. Is that correct?
Multiple military witnesses, multiple people. Yes, yes, and even the chief of police described those helicopters just recently.
Can I ask you this? This is what I never understand. Is I appreciate that the Brazilian government at the time and probably now is very close to the US military and the intelligence community, and for a large period of time, the CIA practically ran a lot of governments in South America and Central America. But why on earth would the Brazilian government have allowed an American retrieval team to fly in and take away what is probably the first definitive evidence of a non-human intelligence?
I asked that very question to, uh, I don't know if I should use his name. It's a name that you're familiar with, and he said because they can.
Really? Yeah.
That's what he said. Yeah, we can do whatever we want.
Because the
Yeah.
implications of this are that the Brazilian military and presumably other militaries around the world are colluding with the US military in covering this up. I mean,
I was shocked. I was
yeah.
shocked when I found out America was involved. I had no idea when I started this investigation. None. I was, oh my God. And not
So,
only that, they were there intimidating witnesses. I have
wow.
people on camera talking about it.
So
Yes.
the
I said,
US was going around intimidating
yes.
witnesses.
Yes. You remember there was a whole family of witnesses. Yeah, a whole family of witnesses. And, they saw what if to take their account at face value, right? They lived right near where the girls saw the creature and where the capture occurred. There was a disc-shaped object quietly and silently and methodically maneuvering through the neighborhood, low. And they watched it. He goes, I watched it for 30 minutes. The whole family did. And they all talk about it. And so, and then they said the Americans came and it's Americans with some Brazilians. And he said maybe NASA. He wasn't sure if it was NASA. They didn't know. But he said maybe NASA. And they were told, don't, this conversation never happened. We were never here. There were the mother of the two girls got the visit. That was like one of the first times, from men in suits. And she's like, I don't know if definitively that it was the Americans, but they looked like Americans. And then one that had a strong accent that spoke Portuguese.
Didn't they offer her money?
Offered her money to tell the girls to go public on TV that they were lying and they saw it was a dog or something other. Yeah. And the mother refused.
Did the
Mother
girls ever
refused.
retract the story?
Never.
Wow. And has the family suffered any retribution from anyone as a result of speaking out?
They said that they've been mocked and laughed at, yes, for decades. Nothing to gain, everything to lose. This is not a career-enhancing, thing, especially back then.
So you've actually got US officials, possibly not military, maybe intelligence, gaslighting and intimidating, bullying, threatening people to try and stop them from talking about what they saw.
No question. And that was one of the first times where I really went all in on reporting on these so-called men in black or men in dark suits. I know it's got a lot of baggage that term is used. But I also, and this individual is going to have to be completely nameless, unfortunately, and I can't even use it. But this individual claimed on the behalf of someone that we've heard of to fly into Brazil and get a piece of that UFO and fly it back to the United States. And this individual swore to me up and down he did. The individual did it. Yeah.
So he was part of the retrieval team.
All I know is that on the behalf of somebody that's pretty high up, he went and he smuggled a piece of an alleged UFO. Didn't say that it was from that particular case, but the timeline would imply that it was of that particular case. But I don't know. But there's more stuff coming out. It's going to continue to come out.
I just want to come back a little bit, James, because it's quite tragic. The story of the military police officer Chiresi who picked up the being and tried to get it medical treatment.
Yes.
His family, that they've got the records, and you've mentioned that the pathologists couldn't do anything for him. What kind of bacteria did they say it was? Was it known within human bacterial understanding?
It was we have just as of like a week or two ago, we got the full report with comments of the autopsy, and we're in the process of having them because our translator, it's very technical, but it was a variant of a particular bacteria that he's never in his life seen, and he's done thousands and thousands of biopsies. He
Now
said it was a variant, like it was an evolved bacteria that was resilient and was doing things that he's never seen do before. And
that's important, because one of the debunks on the Chirese case that's been put out by the officials in the Brazilian military and intelligence community is that this bacteria was nothing unusual, that it wasn't an anomalous bacteria at all. You're categorical that the pathology records that you've newly obtained do verify that this was an anomalous bacteria.
I have him on camera going into total detail about it just recently, looking right at the camera. I'm the guy that did the tissue samples. I'm the guy that saw it. This is what I saw. I've done thousands and thousands of biopsies, never before and never since. That's right now.
I'm very excited to see this new film, James. It sounds like you've nailed down some great information. Can I ask you also about Dr. Italo's telepathic communications with the being? I don't want to take away from what you reveal in the film, but is there any more that you can tell us about what the being communicated to him?
I said to him, because I'm very curious, when you looked in the eyes, because everybody always says when you look in the eyes, that's when it happens, and so what happened when you looked in the eyes? Was there any kind of communication? And yes, he said yes. And then he said, fala se fala, which is speaking without speaking, which I thought was interesting, that it was calm. It was relaxed and calm, and communicating that it was okay to him. And there was, and the way he described it. And I did another, just a couple weeks ago, I did another full sit down 1.5 hour, extremely detailed interview with him, with every possible detail I could possibly extract, that I've yet to completely transcribe and put out into the world, but I will. And perhaps we'd do that with you guys. But where he goes into great detail as much as he can about it. But he said that it was an elevated, advanced intelligence. This is the one thing that he said. There's nothing like it here on Earth. It was.
The other detail, I don't know if it was your documentary or one of the other reports I've read, was that the whole hospital smelt of this ammonia.
That was us. Yes, that was one of the guys at Regional Hospital, and it seemed to have been one of the deceased beings. And the smell was just, and people had described the smell, even when the girls came in within 10, 12 feet of it, the smell lingered in that area, and the mother had come within minutes and the creature was gone, but the smell lingered in her nose. And they all said that the smell was really, really intense. And I don't know if that was, I don't know if that's, I don't know. I don't know if that was some sort of protective thing that they would excrete when they're scared and feeling threatened. I don't know.
Isn't it tragic that the first contact with a non-human intelligence is so acrimonious that essentially a military agency is forcefully removing that alien from receiving the kind of treatment it needed to survive? I mean, it's horrible. I mean, I find the emotional and moral implications of what we're talking about here quite profound.
Oh, believe me, I mean, I do too. And when I asked Dr. Italo on camera what it felt like after 29 years of this bottled up, he started crying. He just, he's been sitting, like, you imagine the weight of that on his shoulders, and he felt so much compassion for this being that was in captivity. The love, the compassion, the elevated consciousness is what he said. He said, we have so much to learn from the eyes of that being.
And yet, for 30 years, it's going to be 30 years in January next year since this incident occurred, which is why the timing of your new film, your updated film, is so important. The Brazilian government and military have persisted with the claim that this is all fiction. They've dismissed any kind of claims that extraterrestrials were recovered. They've classified the events as routine exercises. They said that the creature was likely this homeless man, Modino, that the military vehicles were for standard maintenance, not retrievals. they said that the, this is my favorite one, the hospital aliens were debunked as a dwarf couple
Yeah, yeah,
seeking
yeah, yeah.
medical
Yeah, I
care.
heard that one too. I know.
They also said
So
there was no
ridiculous.
evidence supporting alien bacteria causing Chiretse's death, which
Yeah,
you've
well,
now.
that's you're gonna hear directly from the people that did the autopsy and studied the samples from the founder of the company that did the autopsy directly, Dr. Giannini, and he said the same thing. I don't care. He's older now, and he's like, this is what I saw, and I can't explain it, and I've never seen anything like it before, and I've never seen anything like it since.
God bless
And
these people for having
and
the
there are other
courage to speak.
things. There are other things like we're contacting the lead general who's now retired, and we are actually engaging with this general right now. And this
Well,
general,
that was my next question. Is, I mean, there's obviously been political change in 30 years. Brazil has become a slightly more progressive society. The government's a bit more open-minded. What is there any likelihood of military officials opening up and telling more
so
about what they know?
there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. There are members of I think it's Parliament with senators that are reaching out directly and indirectly for possibly hearings in Brazil. There are efforts going on internally about meetings in the United States. Um, there are doctors that are deciding, contemplating joining Italo, coming forward. I had meetings just recently with the whole inner circle of those doctors and the people that run those hospitals. So this is, in my opinion, I think this is the beginning of the beginning. So I could I be wrong? I could be wrong, but I don't think so. There's a movement happening unlike anything I've ever seen.
And it's not just on Varginha. I think people have realized that to some degree Congress isn't going to take the initiative. It has to come from people who've had direct knowledge and experience, which is actually, this is probably a good time to promote it, and we'll do it at the end, James. If there are people, military personnel who were part of the retrieval operation, who want to speak to you confidentially and exchange information, how can they get information to you?
That's great. That's a great question. Thank you so much. I have a Proton email, and I'll give it to you right now. Over the it is moment of contact at proton.me. Moment of contact at proton.me, and we'll be very mindful of any national security issues or secrecy or whatever the request is.
Clearly, there are people who are operating under TSSCI, top secret compartmented clearances, who are forbidden from speaking about this. And this is something that when you went to Washington, you've also, in this moment of contact film, you've also gone to Washington, D.C. and covered the congressional hearings where multiple witnesses have given evidence of what they know, what they saw. One of them is Dr. Eric Davis. He's a friend of both of us. He's an astrophysicist. He's been heavily involved in investigating paranormal UAP phenomena for many decades. He worked with Robert Bigelow at the National Institute of Discovery Science. He was part of the BASS investigations, the federal government funded investigations into the subject. This is what he told you in this exclusive interview.
Where's the proof? We have alien spaceships in our possession. Mm-hmm. We have bodies. Where and why can't I get the specifics to verify those claims?
If the President of the United States issued an executive order that absolves me of all of my TSSCI NDAs, NDAs are non-disclosure agreements. Those are the agreements we have to sign for every compartment in our SCI clearances. So if the president waives or absolves my obligation to those NDAs, and I get subpoenaed by Congress, somebody on Capitol Hill, some committee, either in the Senate or the House or the both, to reveal everything I know that I learned from my investigations, both unclassified and classified, into the legacy UAP crash retrieval and hardware reverse engineering and NHI programs, I would do so. If I could be waived from that or absolved in some fashion by presidential order, and if Congress subpoenas me, yes, I would go and tell them everything I know.
Dr. Eric Davis makes it very clear there, James, that he knows stuff. He, as you know, investigated the claims that there was this legacy UAP, NHI, non-human intelligence craft retrieval program, and he became aware, he's testified before, that there has been this ongoing reverse engineering program. What he's saying, though, is very significant, because he's essentially saying, if the president, if Donald Trump was merely to say, overnight, I can waive those secrecy orders, I can waive those NDAs, he, Dr. Eric Davis, and presumably many other witnesses could come forward. So how significant is Eric Davis's comment?
Well, it's extremely significant. And, I asked them those specific questions because I feel the frustration among the community, among people that have seen, for instance, Dave Grush back in 2023 making these extraordinary claims and not really providing publicly the extraordinary evidence needed to verify those claims. So I'm constantly thinking as a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker, how to address those issues. Okay, so you've got someone with all these clearances and you signed NDAs. How do we circumvent that? So I've been asking a lot of people like Eric Davis, would you be willing, provided under the right circumstances, we make a plea to President Trump, whoever the president is, the president of the United States, wave the magic wand, provide immunity, which they can do immediately. Would you testify under oath to a bipartisan group of lawmakers and give the details needed to verify the claims? And they're all saying yes. So let's do it. And if there's nothing to it, then hey, you got nothing to hide.
And I can tell you, James, I know multiple people who would fall over themselves to come forward like that. They're patriots, so they're never going to breach their secrecy oath unless they're authorized to do so. Some of them have actually given evidence in confidence to the Senate Select Committee for Intelligence privately in a skiff, but they really want the public to hear their evidence. And at the moment, we seem a bit hamstrung because Congress isn't passing the disclosure laws that would allow the protection of these whistleblowers, to allow particularly contractors, government contractors, not military employees, but government contractors, to feel safe about coming forward.
You imagine it's like, okay, there's nothing to see here. Fair enough. Pass the act, pass the bill. The disclosure, UAP Disclosure Act, like pass it. I mean, why?
So do you think, James, from your knowledge of what's going on, do you think President Trump's being got at on this issue? Or do you think, as J.D. Vance, the vice president, indicated just very recently in an interview with Miranda Devine, I think her Pod Force One, he admitted that he's actually interested in the subject matter, but that they've been distracted by so many other issues, but they're going to...
So I'm only speaking from personal experience. I've interviewed Carter and Ford and indirectly President Clinton, and they all basically said that they made inquiries into the UAP or UFO phenomenon and were not happy with the answers they were getting. So it's extraordinary to think that the president, the commander-in-chief of the United States, could get an intelligence community to basically steer him away from any information. However, I think we're living in different times now. I think there are enough people talking about it. We've had 4 congressional hearings in the last several years. The word is out. The implications, global implications, are so profound that I think creating the right circumstance and really making a plea to the president, I think he just might do it. So I'm optimistic.
Well, so am I. I mean, I must confess, I do think it's time for the public to actually see what these witnesses all know. And there are witnesses who want to come forward with direct evidence. I mean, I've actually spoken to people who've touched these craft, James. That's why I'm very sure that the legacy program is a reality. And what's stopping them is these top secret SCI clearances that require them to keep it confidential, even to lie about it if they're asked about it publicly. So I think the president really is, the ball is now in his court about whether or not he wants to be open about it.
That's one of the reasons why I put the quote from Eric Davis at the end of the movie. I want the world to see, like, these people are willing to come forward, wave the magic wand, provide immunity, and we will give the details needed to verify these claims. You can't say no to that. Like, if there's nothing to hide, give them immunity. Let them talk.
So, James, obviously, your film's coming out. When will your film be coming out?
Later this year. We don't have an exact date, but we will soon. Later this year.
But essentially, the 30th anniversary of the Varginha incident is in January next year, 2026.
Yes, the film will come out just before that.
Let's take a look at your trailer, which we're now going to show exclusively here on Reality Check.
Have you been exposed to undeniable confirmation of a non-human intelligence craft?
There is something out there, and we should know as the people what it is.
Do you believe that the federal government is knowingly concealing evidence about UAPs from the public?
100%.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
When you say crash retrieval, what do you mean?
Non-human, exotic origin, vehicles that have either landed or crashed.
For the first time in history, the names of alleged companies and gatekeepers analyzing recovered alien technology are being exposed.
Are any of you willing to name specific individuals?
Dr. James Ryder at Lockheed, Glenn Gaffney, CIA.
For decades, we've heard allegations of the retrieval of objects of alien origin.
In 1933, some disc-shaped object crashed.
It was not anything from this earth.
A UFO crashed in Kingman.
Didn't drop out of the sky. It had to come in on an angle.
The feeling I had during the encounter was like no type of aircraft I've ever seen before.
I saw the evidence. It's a crash retrieval, there's a craft, and there's alien bodies.
But one of the most well-documented UFO crash retrieval cases involving live aliens took place in Varginha, Brazil.
There's a crashed vehicle.
Dois seres extraterrestres foram capturados, depois, posteriormente, foram levados para o hospital.
Meu nome é Carlos de Souza.
Meu nome é Cátia Xavier. Meu nome é Liliane Silva. Meu nome é Valquíria Silva. Em 1996, eu vi uma criatura desaranhada.
Fui até o local quando o general de brigada falou para mim que era assunto de segurança nacional. Ele morre por aí, acabou.
Deu pra ver nitidamente. Era charuto no ar.
O negócio da agenda, eu nem quis tocar, porque vai deixar o sino aqui na bala. Levaram para Campinas e Campinas levaram para os Estados Unidos.
Now, for the first time in history,
nunca vi caso assim.
We have the most compelling first-hand testimony.
Todo mundo surpreso. Qualquer diz que ia sofrer uma punição muito severa.
Of communication with a live alien in captivity.
Foi aqui. Os olhos eram como se fosse uma gota de água.
How much time did he spend with the alien in the room?
3, 4 meses.
Wow, James, that trailer is extraordinary. Dr. Italo Venturelli, he oozes credibility.
You know, Dr. Italo is willing to put his right hand on a Bible and take a public lie detector test tomorrow. He has everything to lose and nothing to gain, and he's not coming forward anonymously.
Well, I would love to see him and so many of these direct witnesses that you found in Varginha come forward to both the Brazilian Parliament and the US Congress and give their evidence in open public hearings under oath.
Yeah, there's things going on behind the scenes right now to facilitate events like what you're talking about.
And let's hope that President Trump or someone close to him, maybe Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State and the acting National Security Advisor, who does have a strong interest in the UAP subject and has admitted that this is a subject that needs to be taken seriously. Maybe J.D. Vance, who indicated very recently in another podcast that he was also interested in the UAP issue. maybe we can see some leadership from the new administration and show some guidance to the public about what's really been going on. James Fox, thank you so much for bringing this extraordinary story to Reality Check. Where will people be able to watch Moment of Contact?
Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Fandango, Google Play. I'll be making announcements in the upcoming days and weeks.
And just to remind people, if you have any hot tips you want to give James Fox, the email he gave us earlier is momentofcontact@proton.me. And of course, you can always contact us here with your queries or tips at realitycheck@newsnationnow.com. And of course, this show will not just be available on YouTube. We'll be giving it a plug, of course, on NewsNation, on the main TV, but we'll also be airing it on all of the podcast channels, including Audible and Spotify. Great to talk to you, James. Thank you so much for being with us here on Reality Check, and best wishes all.
I appreciate being on. Thank you so much, Ross.